Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. So, good morning, everyone. So, we have Dr. Praduman Srivastav for today's session as a speaker. And Dr. Praduman Srivastav is an associate professor in the Department of Speech Pathology and Audiology at the University of Nevada. The focus of his scientific mission is to investigate the linguistic and the cognitive factor of reading and writing disorder in children with and without language learning disability. His academic journey commenced with a bachelor's degree from Ali Yavarjan National Institute of Hearing Handicap India, followed by a master's degree from All India Institute of Speech and Hearing, Mysuru. Dr. Srivastav have further honored with expertise by completing his Ph.D. in Speech and Hearing Science at Arizona State University, where he worked on hypertext reading comprehension among adolescents with and without LLD, under the mentorship of Dr. Gray. Subsequently, he pursued a postdoctoral fellowship at the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. Dr. Srivastav has been deeply immersed in both research and pedagogy. His research predominantly revolves around the cognitive and the linguistic of reading and writing development and disorders in children, with a keen focus on those at risk of LLD. His scholarship contributes are evident in his numerous publications, national and international publication. His recent publication titled Hypertext Reading Comprehension of Adolescents with Typical Language Development and Language Learning Disability in Journal Language, Speech and Hearing Services in School. In addition to his scholarly achievements, Dr. Srivastav is also esteemed educator with over more than 7 years of teaching experience in higher education institute. I welcome you for today's session, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Singh. Thank you, everybody. That's such a nice, warm welcome. Thanks for the kind words. Truly appreciate it. I thank Dr. Vijay, Dr. Singh, Mrs. Yadav, and all the organizers, and the facilitators of the session. Most importantly, I thank all the students. This is for you. This is for you guys. This is important for you, and that's what makes this whole thing meaningful. Thanks for wanting to, hear about this and learn about it. Just to contextualize this a little bit, is whether you foresee yourself as a scholar in future, publishing research or not, you will interact with research articles. You will interact with research articles, you will read it, you will, based on the research articles, you will decide your remediation strategies. So depending on what work setting you work, you will have to interact with scholarly resources. And that's when this knowledge will come in, a little bit of perspective here, to be able to appraise articles, to be able to write articles, things like that. So this is something that, it has been a part of my education, part of my training from master's, and into PhD and through postdoc, and that is something that I'm trying to share here too. So without further ado, like you all know, this is, the topic is Publishing First Manuscript, Authors and Publishers' Perspective. I am going to keep this presentation short and sweet. So I'm thinking of maybe 30, 35, 40 minutes of presentation, followed with question. I am also, I think I'm assuming this right. I think you all are in your computer sets. So you have access to your computers. I have a little bit of activity in the middle. And I'm thinking that, and we'll just make that interactive. So you guys can unmute yourself and we can have that discussion. Just to kind of keep this session a little lively. So let's get going. So the first one, something that when we talk about publishing, we don't talk about presenting. This is something that intuitively it makes sense, but over years, this is something that I have started to firmly believe, is that if you want to publish an article, you have to present it first. It's hard to actually directly go into publishing when you have not presented the article. And that's why it's important to be a part of a conference, or as simple as, a class presentation or a group presentation, webinar presentation. Try to present that piece before you publish it. And the reason for that is that when you present, you get used to the deadlines for that presentation. I don't know if you see my cursors here, but you have deadlines for the presentations. It goes in your CV, so it goes in your curriculum vitae. It's important for your curriculum vitae. It helps you do a kind of a pilot study. So it helps you assess, okay, fine, if your presentation makes sense or not. It's a quick review of your study. And then most importantly is this blue circle. From the presentation, you get that feedback that directly refines your publishing, what you want to address. So the problem is that sometimes when we don't present it, we don't have that feedback, and we are in our own little circle, and we are directly trying to publish it. And most of the times, in my experience and with my colleagues' experience too, that if we did not present that that presentation, and we have directly went to publish that article, most probably we have either got rejected or we have received major revisions. And when we sit and think back, then why did we get rejected, or why did we get major revisions? We start to connect these dots, and we start thinking, okay, fine, yeah, we did not present this study anywhere. Okay, so it's important to present first and get that feedback, and then move on to publishing. Okay, and once you present, you have your publication plan along with deadlines. Now, something to keep in mind, publication writing is hard. Writing is hard. It is, but in our academia, in our field, that's how you show your endurance. That's how you demonstrate your resilience. That's how you show your grit. That you can sit, you can connect these dots, you can write, you can stick to the deadlines. You can write for 3 or 4 hours every day for a month and get that publication out. So it does take that skill set, and it takes years to refine it, but that is how you prove yourself too, in a way. Okay, with a publication. Now we can discuss that is, if that's fortunate or unfortunate, but that is one metric of your success. How many publications you have, and peer-reviewed articles and things like that. Something to keep in mind, that yes, not everybody, it takes years to refine that skill. Okay, so say if you presented, and now you're ready to publish your study. Something to keep in mind, depending on how you want to interact with the community at large, that's what decides what kind of publication you want to do. Okay, so for example, there are all these different kinds of publications: systematic review, randomized clinical trials, a chapter review, a book chapter, case control, cohort studies, case report, communication, letter to editor. You all have an idea of this, but real quick, if I were to say a sentence for each one of them, systematic review is essentially a historical review of the current literature in that field, right? You all know that. Systematic review. It is not the same as meta-analysis, but systematic review and meta-analysis are sometimes used interchangeably. Randomized clinical trials, you guys know that when there is a clinical trial on a patient where we study a specific patient with all its features. We know book chapter publications, case control or cohort studies, where case control or cohort studies are when you compare a set of children with disorder with similar set of children without the disorder. So if I were to compare kids with learning disability with children without learning disability, that would be a case control or a cohort study. Case report is when you study one case and his or her or that case's features or characteristics. Communication could be, this is not very common in social behavioral research, communication publications. Example of communication would be, for example, if you submit a short article that spotlights the journal issue. or an editorial would be an example of a communication. Epilogue, you would have heard of epilogue. Epilogue is another form of communication where epilogue usually goes as the last chapter in a journal, where with that epilogue kind of summarizes all the findings of the articles of that journal, and then kind of it draws general conclusions. And that's an epilogue. So epilogue usually goes in the end of the journal. I don't know if you have heard of erratum, E-R-R-A-T-U-M. Erratum is when you submit an article and you realize that, oh, I actually did something wrong and I should go back and correct it. That would be an erratum, where you submit a correction to an article. So these are all different examples of communication. Letter to an editor, you guys understand the example of that. So just wanted to make sure that we are aware of the different kinds of manuscripts. And this, depending on how you want to communicate to the community, how you want to publish your research, your work, it could fall in any of these categories. Okay. Oh, by the way, I just wanted to say that, I enjoyed making this presentation. I included all these colors and I was enjoying making this presentation, and I was thinking of like just bringing all my knowledge to the slides. So I truly enjoyed the process. So I'm really excited about this presentation, and you'll see lots of colors, and colors just make me happy. So just wanted to, that's why, I try not to include so many words on the slides, just to kind of keep you entertained. And the presentation is also not that long, okay? So the next is, now we're gonna talk about the parts of manuscript. Okay, now so you see this here, right? So these are the qualities of a good manuscript. And these are the parts of a good manuscript. These are the qualities. A good manuscript should have a structure, should have a logical flow, should be contextualized to the current literature, should have good content. That means it should hold value, and it should have a take-home message, conclusion. Okay, a good manuscript has all these qualities. Don't confuse these with parts. Parts are these. Oh, sorry. Parts are these. So now,
volume
okay, so parts are these. So these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 parts. A complete article should have all these parts. Now you see here and you all know this. You all know this. The 4 main important parts of an article is introduction, methods, results, and discussion. And this is back in 1999, the researchers introduced this IMRAD scheme. IMRAD is nothing but I for introduction, M for methods, R for results, and D for discussion. Okay, that's an IMRAD scheme. And besides, these are the 4 main parts. And then besides that, we have title, abstract, keywords, and conclusion. So try to remember this as TACK. Okay, so we're gonna call him Mr. Imrad Tech, if that makes sense. Just trying to be funny here. But so Mr. Imrad Tech has all these 8 parts of an article. Okay, now something to keep in mind, the title of the presentation is Authors and Publishers Perspective, right? So in the beginning, when you start, as novel researchers, when you start publishing, you're going to be super focused at this. Okay, as you start your scholarly journey, you start writing articles and things like that, you're going to be super focused at these parts. And you may find yourself not so much focusing on the qualities. I would say, please do not assume that just because you have the parts, you have the qualities. Okay, qualities are publishers' perspective. This is what they see. So it happens all the time. It happened to me a lot of times where I was not rejected because there was a part missing. I was rejected because it did not have a good logical flow. My article did not have a good logical flow, or I missed a context, or I did not give a good conclusion, or a good take-home message. It had all the parts, but I still got rejected. So it has happened many times. It happens with seasoned researchers too. So understand that these are publishers' perspective. This is what the publisher or the editor-in-chief, whoever you submit to, that's what they are reading your article, but this is what they are thinking in their brain. And this is where it's important that once you write an article, have it read by one of the peer review, have it peer reviewed, an informal peer review by one of your friends who may or may not share your expertise. Okay, I always give my article, I find a person who doesn't share my expertise, and I give the article to that person to read. Okay, because that person doesn't share my expertise, the way that person sees the logical flow, no one else can see that way. Okay, so you actually get a good feedback on logical flow when you ask a person who does not share your expertise to read your article before you submit in a journal. Okay, so those are a few things I wanted to talk to you about in this slide. Because I'm not looking at your faces, I'm gonna keep moving, so I'm not getting that visual feedback. But feel free to stop me or post a question and things like that. But in a couple of slides, we will pause. Okay. Then the next part is title. Okay, title is the most important element. It's the most important element of your manuscript, but it is also the last. You don't work from title on. You don't develop your title first. You work on your article first, and then you give the title in the end, right? So title is, and these are some of the do's and don'ts of a title. Title should be catchy, okay? So that's why sometimes you see article titles as a question, an interrogative, right? That is a question title is catchy. It captures the audience. Okay, it should be effective in terms of it should not be too long. It should be easy for the search engines to find the article. It should be easy to be indexed. And it should be, you all know that we also have to develop keywords. Your title should include most of your keywords of the manuscript. It should be based on the keywords. It should be simple. Okay, a title should not be more than 15 words. More than 15 words, a person is not able to will not be able to remember that article, the title. It should not be sloppy in terms of should not have too many words in it, or it should not have acronyms or abbreviations or jargons in it. That's a very common mistake that we sometimes do, that novel researchers do, where you include an acronym or an abbreviation in your title. Right there, if you include an abbreviation or an acronym in your title, you lose your readers right there. Now, title is different from running title. Okay, you all know what running title is, right? So you have the title in the top, and then you have running title at the bottom as a footer. Right, running title is usually 50% of the title. So if my title is 10 words, my running title should not be more than 5 words. Okay, so it's the kind of rule of thumb to remember between title and running title. Okay, moving on. Next is abstract. Okay, so abstract is, now there are two types of abstract: structured or unstructured. If you read articles, you would have seen this. In structured, some abstracts have these headings in it. An abstract should have all these components: background, aim, methods, results, discussion, and conclusion. A complete abstract have to have all these 6 elements. Now, these 6 portions or elements can be structured. That means you will have a subheading for background. You write 2 or 3 lines about background. Then you have a subheading for aim, subheading for method. So you will see within the abstract, you will see 6 subheadings: background, aim, methods, results, discussion, and conclusion. That is your structured abstract. Most of the time, you see unstructured abstract, which is just one paragraph, one big paragraph, right? So that is usually unstructured. Most of the journals require an unstructured. Sometimes they require a structured, but they give an option that you could develop a structured format for the abstract if you want to. Some of the big don'ts for an abstract is, like I said, like in title, in abstract 2, you don't want to use any abbreviations, acronyms, and citations. Okay, you don't want to waste abstract space with citations. Space in journal is precious. Don't waste that. Abstract is usually 70 to 300 words. Okay, so you have a lot to convey, a lot to convey in 70 to 300 words. Writing less is harder than writing more. When you write an abstract, that's when you start to realize that how do you fit all of that in 70 to 100 words, 70 to 300 words. Okay. Think of abstract as your movie trailer, right? Usually movie trailers are 2.5 minutes long. But when you see the movie trailer, you decide whether you want to watch the movie or not, right? That's what the abstract is. That when I read an abstract, I should know, oh, I wanna read the article or not. Did the article catch me or not? So that clarity should be there in the reader's mind when the reader reads the abstract. Okay. So yeah, so abstract, once you read the abstract, the reader should be, Arya Par, whether you are in the article or not. But the abstract should give that full trailer, the idea of the movie. The abstract should also give all these 6 information, but also should leave a little bit of suspense. Okay, should leave a little bit of open ending, suspense, so that the reader would want to read the article to know about that suspense. That's exactly what the movie trailers do, right? They give you these snippets, but then they leave a little bit of suspense and open ending that you want to watch the movie to think of like, okay, fine, what happened next? So it's a very delicate balance in abstract. Abstract is it's important to kind of devise the abstract very smartly and wisely. Okay, most important thing here in abstract, your abstract is usually, it includes these 3 portions: context, content, and conclusion. It is usually remembered as 3 C's, CCC. Okay, context reflects the gaps in the current literature. Okay, what are the gaps in the current literature? And how your article is filling those gaps in that literature. These 2 things are important. So again, understand, we will again get to context and content again. But context is you're contextualizing your article. I mean, why would you publish an article if it's not needed, if it's not filling a gap? So you want to be able to show in your abstract that, hey, there is this literature, and there are gaps in this literature. And by the way, my article fills these gaps. My article has the content to fill the gaps. If you're able to do that, you have contextualized your article. Okay, and if you're able to connect these content and context together, now you are able to make a proper conclusion, which gives the future perspective. So, but you have to connect that. You have to identify the gap, and then you have to demonstrate that your article fills those gaps. And that has to come out nice and bold, okay, in your abstract. Another don't in your abstract is be very careful that you don't overstate your conclusion. Okay, so we'll talk about that, and it should not be too long. So remember, 70 to 300 words. When you're writing your thesis, I don't know what stage you all are in your studies or in your academics, but But when you're reviewing your thesis or when you're preparing for thesis, you're quickly browsing title and abstract, right? And based on that, you're deciding, okay, fine, I want the full text of this article or not. Okay, so and this is time sensitive. So you don't want to make an abstract too long too. So less, but you have to reflect everything in there. Okay, so hopefully we are good in this slide.
Hello. So you are not audible.
Okay, can you guys see the slide or not?
No, sir, the slides are not visible yet.
Yeah, so this was the problem, sorry. Okay, is the full slide visible now? Is it visible now?
Not yet, sir. I think it will take a few seconds. Your video is also got stuck, sir. Yes, meanwhile, I would request all the participants, if by this time they have got any doubt or any question which they want to ask to the speaker, they can start putting up in the chat box, so that at the end the Q&A session, 15 minutes, we can have the discussion.
Meanwhile, we have also provided the feedback form. So Neha, you can announce all of the participants to go through of it and to fill the feedback form.
Yes, ma'am. So all the participants, the feedback form link is there in the chat. So kindly go through the feedback form and please fill the form.
Okay, Neha, can you guys see the full slide now?
Yes, Dr. Srivastav, you can see the slides now.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't know why the Zoom is recycling. Anyway, so this is where we were before. So this is where I request all the participants to have, this is a quick activity. Feel free to unmute. Try to point out, to read this abstract. It may be a little complex for some of you, which is fine, but try to see if you think of the presentation that I did so far and see if there are any problems in this abstract, and unmute and tell me.
Dr. Srivastava, we cannot see the screen.
Can you see this now?
Yes, now it's visible.
Sorry, we are having technical issues, but I was requesting my students, if you see any mistakes in this abstract, so unmute and please feel free to point out those mistakes. This is just a quick interactive moment. So one thing I would say, so we'll try to go back. So background, the abstract should have background, aim, methods, results, discussion, and conclusion. Do you think this abstract have all those parts? And if not, what do you think this is missing?
I would say the abstract is started with the aim of the study. It has not given the background, and the conclusion is also like, it's way too much. They could have concised it.
Yes, beautiful. Okay, so that's good. It doesn't have the background. It almost starts at the methods. It starts with the aim, right? So if you look at this, background, aim, methods, results, discussion, conclusion. Background is clearly missing in this. At least 1 or 2 lines of the background, why I'm doing this study, should have been included. You also pointed out conclusion. What's wrong with the conclusion? Can you tell me a little bit more?
Since the aim should have been little more specific or in points, the conclusion can be related to that. It was just only one aim, but the conclusions are so many variables. They have compared so many variables, and the conclusions are too much. It doesn't correlate with the aim of the study, I feel.
That is true. Yeah, so thank you, Veda. That is true. Conclusion is not relating with that, and you're right, and that's exactly what I'm trying to kind of draw everybody's attention to. You see this point right here, overstating the conclusion? This abstract has overstatement of the conclusion. Look at that last sentence. Look at the last sentence. This study suggests significant remediation implications for improving reading fluency of children with learning disability by capitalizing on their speaking rate. That is strong words. These are bold sentences. Unless you are very confident of your study, that your study is really doing that, you want to be a little bit sensitive about not overstating the conclusion. You don't want to come out reckless. You don't want to come out careless. That shows the lack of maturity when in terms of writing. So something to keep in mind. This is not to say that we should not feel confident of the study. There has been one study where I was very confident of the result, and I did not get dinged on by the editor when I made strong conclusions. But you have to be careful when you overstate your conclusion. Okay, something to keep in mind. Then, okay, that's good. Let's keep moving. Keywords. Okay, in keywords, now we all know that abstract usually have keywords in the bottom, right? Definitely include the keywords. If the journal doesn't ask you to give the keywords, you may want to write the editor and ask them that, hey, can I include the keywords? There are 2 ways that you can populate keywords in your abstract. One is the general way, and the other one is custom ones, general ones and custom ones. Usually, general ones is when the journal develops the keywords for you. Okay, an example of that is medical education statement. That is one of the indexing resources which generates the keywords for you. So if you put an abstract, it gives you the keywords. In academia and social behavioral research, we don't want to use the general ones. I have tried that. It is not always accurate. If there is an option, you want to include the custom ones. You want to develop your own keywords. Okay, so you should provide that. So if that isn't, that information is not clear to the journal you're publishing, it's a good idea to ask the editor-in-chief that, hey, can I provide my keywords for this article? When you provide your keywords, then it is easy for indexing the databases that you use, or it's easy to search. Keywords can be between 5 to 10 words. You don't want to provide a whole lot of keywords too. But when you provide the keywords, it's easier for people to find your article. It's easier for indexing your article. Okay, so think about keywords as the nickname to your child, right? So you nickname your child, and that's very personal. You know your child, that's why you give the nicknames. You don't ask somebody else to nickname your child, right? So think of keywords that those are also important points. It's easier for people to find if you have accurate keywords. Okay, so now start relating. Keywords should be in your abstract. Keywords should be in your title. All these things, all these dots should align, right? Okay, now we are going to the meat of the article, right? So this is the main big portion of the article is introduction. Introduction usually are 4 paragraphs long. This is usually 10 to 15% of the manuscript's total word count. The 4 paragraphs are these 4. Okay, so again, this is what I was talking about. In your introduction, you want to state that what is known about that literature. What is known? What do we know currently? You want to state that. Then you want to state what are the gaps in the literature? What is unknown? What is unknown about this area, right? So what is known? What is unknown? And then what gaps your article is going to fill, and how are you going to fill that? These are the 4 logical flow of information. You want to be able to capture all these 4 topics in your introduction. Your introduction will not have a logical flow if you're not including these 4 things. So again, one is what's known, what's currently known about in the literature, what's currently present in the literature about your field, about your topic. What is it missing? You have to be able to identify what are the gaps. And then your article may not fill all the gaps, but you have to identify what gaps your article is filling, and then how you're going to fill that. If that is not clear, right there, you could get a desk reject from the editor. Editors, when they read the introduction, they want to see that if this article is contributing to their journal. If your article is not filling a gap in their journal, they are not going to waste their journal space on your article. Okay, so it's important that you know that what gap your article is filling. One common mistake that we constantly see is novel researchers, they treat their introduction as this systematic review. They have worked hard in finding the most important 20 relevant articles, and then they simply summarize these 20 articles in sequence. So your introduction should not look like a systematic review or just a flow of articles. Okay. You definitely want to make your introduction current, make your introduction relevant. It stays relevant when you include new articles. New articles are the articles that are published in the last decade. Okay, and any articles before 10 years starts to lose its credibility, so to say. Okay, and the last paragraph I want to highlight is the blue portion right here. Here you want to include, here you want to include the rationale. This last paragraph, the introduction, includes the rationale and hypothesis, and it also includes the purpose of the study, where you clearly state your primary objective, secondary objective, tertiary objectives, and the research questions. So there is a proper logical flow in your introduction. When you, again, kind of going back to this second point here, If you include a bunch of studies in your introduction, you lose your reader there. It makes a beautiful lullaby. Like I usually read, when you read these articles, you get a good sleep. And if you feel sleepy when you're reading an introduction, that's not a good article. Okay, so just something to keep in mind. Another thing here, this last here, you should be able to convince your readers that why your study is important, and that happens in introduction. You should be able to say that, hey, there is a gap in the literature, and it is my article and only my article that can fill that gap. You should be able to convince your readers based on the introduction. Introduction doesn't have to be long. Introductions are usually 4 to 5 paragraphs long, but it is very concise and solid in terms of convincing the others that, hey, your article is needed to fill that gap. Okay. And yeah, you should be able to convince others that without your article, that literature review is not complete. Okay, so your article is needed in that body of literature to make it complete, to fill that one more gap. Then next is methods. Methods is the skeleton of your manuscript. Okay, it usually has all these, all these parts. It has study settings. Where was your study done? What is the setting or the area of the study? Then your study designs, which could include randomized control or cross-sectional or longitudinal study design. It includes your sample size and how did you decide that sample size? So your power analysis and all that is included in there too. And what was the technique of collecting your sample size? If you gathered ethical approvals, so institutional review board, or if you gathered approvals from the organization you're working on, you want to include those approvals along with the approval numbers. You want to include the recruitment details, and within recruitment, you want to include at least 3 exclusion or inclusion criteria, at least 3 inclusionary or exclusion criteria for your participants. Include experimental details. This is very important. This is important. Experimental details includes all the minute details of your study. So if I do a study here in US, and if you're reading my article, you should be able to replicate the same study without having to call me or text me or email me. You should be able to replicate my study anywhere in the world. Okay, and you may get different results because we are dealing with human subjects, but you should be able to replicate. You should not have any logistical questions about replicating the study. And that's what falls in the experimental details. Sometimes publishers see the experimental details, and if they find that this study is not replicable, they call that a methodological flaw. You don't want your articles to have a methodological flaw. You don't want a flaw in your article. Flaw is it's a loaded term that you don't want that in your article. Okay, and then you include your statistical analysis, which includes both descriptive and inferential statistics, right? In all these parts, you're addressing these 3 main questions that is in the center. What was done, where was it done, and how was it done, right? So what was done is all these boxes. Where was it done is your study setting, and how was it done is all your experimental details. Okay, sorry about that. Then in your methods, if you have used any softwares, you want to include the software details too. Don't miss out on that. Then if you have used any equipments, you want to include the equipment model number. Where was that equipment manufactured, city and country? So all these little details that we don't even think about, all that is important. You actually get these minor feedbacks or major feedbacks from the peer review when you don't include these fine details. Okay, if you have done inter-rater reliability, how did you train your raters? How did you establish inter-rater reliability? All that is included in your experimental details. So methods is the skeleton. yes, I'll come back to method. There's one more point. Let's keep moving. Then the next part is results. This is the heart of your manuscript. That's why that beautiful, colorful heart I have for you guys on the slide. This is the first thing you write. Results is the first thing you write. Okay, and that makes the heart of my manuscript. That triggers the whole manuscript. Okay, so you write your results in past tense. There is a yin-yang scheme that we talk about, and what that means is that you know what data you have collected and how you have collected that data, right? So based on what you have collected and how you have collected, you can choose to discuss what portion of the data you want to discuss. Okay, sometimes what happens is, so this is where, I'll kind of go a little slow. So I want you guys to understand that sometimes we collect a big data set. Okay, that big data set could have multiple stories in it, right? So you collect a big data set, you run multiple statistical analysis, and you get multiple findings. Each multiple finding has its own story, right? So, and each of those stories can actually make separate, beautiful articles, right? So, but as long as you know that what data you have collected and what finding makes how much of an article, that you can decide. You can collect one big data set and have multiple articles in it. Okay, why I'm mentioning this is where I have a little bit of disagreement with my PhD mentor. My PhD mentor believed that, she believes that, Dr. Gray believes that if you collect a data, that whole data should make one article. But with experience and the more I see, people collect big data sets. And depending on the statistical analyses, you get different findings. Each of those findings could have multiple studies. So one big data set can have multiple articles coming out of it, and that's totally fine. That's not a problem. The problem is when we hide the findings that doesn't support our hypothesis. That's cheating. I'll repeat. What is wrong is when we hide or when we cover up findings that doesn't support our story. That is wrong. Okay, so something to keep in mind that your results is made of what data you collected, how you collected that data, and then you can decide what you want to include in your manuscript, and there's nothing wrong with that. That is your interpretation. Okay, in your results, you want to use tables and figures to explain complex data and statistical analysis, which includes both descriptive and inferential. You all know this. Needless to say that what you put in your table, you don't want to make a paragraph on that. Big mistake there. Okay, that's too much redundancy. That's too much waste of space. What you have put in the table, don't put that in a narration. Don't narrate that. Okay, also wisely cite your tables and figures in the results. Okay, so where you want to cite it, that the positioning of those citations are important. This point is avoid redundancy with the tabulated information. And in results, this is another common mistake we see, that novel researchers or first-time publishers, they beautifully they explain the article, the results, but then they start discussing and interpreting and contextualizing that data. Wrong space for results. Results space is not meant for that. You just want to mention what you found. Interpretation and discussion happens in discussion. Okay, so 3 main paragraphs in results. First is demographic data. Second paragraph is inferential statistics. And third paragraph is new results the study offers. Okay, this is usually the structure of a result. Usually a short section. You write that first. You pick what you want, what result you want to make the story. You know the results, you know the findings. You think of what findings to put together that makes a beautiful story for your article. And that's where you want to start. You write your results first. Okay. Hopefully you all are with me. I'm not seeing your faces or body language. I hope I'm not losing you all, but I'm close to the end of the presentation. One of the last parts is discussion. Now, discussion is, remember when I mentioned in the introduction that you want to be able to identify the gaps? In discussion, you want to start filling the gaps. This is where you want to take every finding of all the findings from your results, and you want to go back and start linking those findings with the studies that you mentioned in the introduction. In other words, the studies that you mentioned in your introduction should not be very different from the studies that you discuss in your discussion. You could lose your readers if you have a whole different set of studies mentioned in the discussion that is not present in the introduction. You're linking back, you're threading back. Okay, so now in your discussion, you're trying to link based on your findings, you're trying to link based on all the studies that you mentioned in your introduction. So you have to tie back to the introduction. Okay, so in discussion, you are talking about how your study is filling the gap that was identified in the introduction that you have already planned, right? Your data. Now, this is something important to remember, that sometimes the novel researchers, or again, first-time publishers, is something I did too, that we have this hypothesis in mind and we want our results to 100% agree with the hypothesis. But the reality is, as long as your method is strong, a little bit of disagreement or a little bit of finding that is not agreeing with your hypothesis is actually good. That's a star for your study. That's good for your study. So your data may agree or may not agree with the current literature, but that's what makes your study unique or important. Okay, so that is something to keep in mind, that just because, how we treat our kiddos, that our kids may not be the best kid, but our kid is the only one kid in the whole wide world, right? Right? मेरा बेटा एक बेटा है और एक मेरी बेटी एक ही बेटी है जो and she's the best. My daughter is the best, right? So that's how your article is the best, is the only article in that literature body. And you have to believe that, and you have to stay focused at that. Okay, so it's unique, and it is unique and important, and may or may not disagree with the current literature, but that's where you bring your critical thinking, right? This is where you discuss. Like I was mentioning before, that if your findings do not agree with a study already in the literature, that makes it better. You don't want to cover it up. You don't want to brush it under the rug. Okay, you want to include that. That makes your article better. Usually discussions are 5 paragraphs long. Usually discussions are 20% of the manuscript's total word count. And these are the 5 paragraphs of discussion. You want to start with key results. Then you want to compare your results with other studies, which is mentioned in your introduction. You want to contextualize the results in sequence, right? So you want to have a good sequence of your findings, and you want to tie back to those studies that you have mentioned in your introduction. In discussion, you're not looking for new articles. That is already done. Okay, you have already decided your 20 to 40 articles that is in your introduction, and you're just tying back to those articles based on your findings. When you talk about your strengths and limitations, and you make your generalized conclusions. These are the 5, general paragraph of the discussion. Something to keep in mind, discussion is the only portion of an article where you can use these terms: shows, suggests, may, might, demonstrate, believe. It's okay to use these rather amorphous or fluid terms, because this is where the publisher expects you to critically think. Or when you critically think, you say, this finding suggests that reading fluency and speaking rate may be related. Or we believe, based on these findings and the model, that speaking rate and reading fluency may have a correlation. So here you can use these terms in discussion. You want to demonstrate your critical thinking skills here. Okay, again, this is just another reminder that in discussion, you are tying the content and the context. Again, content is what you study, what you found in your study. And context is what are the gaps and how your study is filling those gaps. That should reflect in your discussion. Okay. Okay, I'm just looking at my notes if I am included everything. And finally, we have conclusion. Usually conclusion is a part of discussion, or sometimes you develop a separate conclusion. With a conclusion, it's a small short paragraph in the end. You make an impact with 3 important messages. What are the chief findings, the main findings? What are the take-home message based on, and then what are the future directions? This is the first time you will mention the future perspectives or future directions of the study. Conclusion is the portion, either the last paragraph of the discussion, or if you have a separate conclusion paragraph, then you want to mention your future directions. This is also a portion where you want to talk about limitations, where you fell short. What were some of the limitations of your study? Because the important part is that you don't want your study, unless it's truly perfect, you don't want your study to look perfect. You don't want to embellish your study. You don't want to make it seem like this was the best capstone study ever done. Your study is simply a link in a chain. Okay, so when you mention your limitations, that gives somebody else to fill that gap, to fill that limitation, and build onto your study. Right? So that's the aim. And that's what the beauty of academia community relationship, right? So all the studies, we're doing studies on human subjects. The human subjects will have errors and will have limitations, right? You want to mention those limitations. Okay, careful that your limitation is not a flaw, of course. Needless to say that, but I'm mentioning that your limitation that you're mentioning should be a good limitation, should be an awesome limitation that people look at this and like, okay, fine, yeah, I can build onto this limitation and make this study good, right? So that's the thought process there. Your references, usually, at least American Speech and Hearing, Language and Hearing Association journals, the 4 journals, specify not more than 30 citations. Usually you will have, journals will accept 30 to 50 citations. It could fall in any of these styling formats. So, it could be American Psychiatric Association, American Medical Association. And then these 2 are, yeah, I'll get back to you guys on these 2, but these are the 4 main styling formats. Yeah, sure. Yes, I think NLM is National Library, National Library of Medicine. And I think MLA is Modern Language Association. So these are the 4 acceptable styling formats. We usually use ABA or AMA. The last couple of slides, this is something that you all will find interesting, and this is more of a take-home message of this whole presentation. You want to organize your manuscript with all this. So these are all the components of a complete manuscript. Of course, you submit a blind manuscript with the IMRAD scheme. You format your references, tables and figures, authors' contributions, conflict of interest. If your study was funded, then details on the funding organization. If there are ethical approvals, for example, like I mentioned before, institutional review boards, you want to include all of that. You want to include the list of authors and their affiliations and emails. Cover letter is an important aspect, so you want to definitely include a cover letter. Sometimes some journals include a blind copy and another copy with the authors. So you want to have both the copies available if the journals ask that. Title page with abstract and keywords, separate figures in JPEG and TIFF format, and then separate tables in Excel format. These are all the components. And then you could have supplementary files, for example, IRB or appendices and all of that. So these are all the components of a complete or manuscript organization. This is a review. Sorry. I'm trying to move this. Yeah. So, I just want to read that to you, which is at the top. Editors and scientists portray peer review as a quasi-sacred process that helps to make science our most effective, our most objective truth teller. But we know the system of peer review is biased, unjust, unaccountable, incomplete, easily fixed, often insulting, usually ignorant, occasionally foolish, and frequently wrong. All these are a part. This is how the peer review process is. It's not perfect. Democracy is not perfect, but we need democracy because without it, world is a worse place, right? So that's why peer review is not a perfect process, but we do need that just to advance our field to have it rather than not have it. Okay, so understand that. Now, having said that, that peer review is not a perfect process, I just want to quickly walk you through these steps. When you submit an article, you could get an outright reject the first time, and the reason for that reject could be that it's out of scope. Now, that is our homework. We should do that homework before submitting an article. What I usually do, that I send an abstract. If I'm confused, if I read the scope of the journal, and if I'm not able to decide whether my article fits in that for that journal or not, or within the scope of that journal or not, I send my abstract to the editor-in-chief. And I simply ask this question: do you think, I need your guidance, do you think that this article fits within the scope of your journal? And you get a quick response. They tell you straightforward, like, yes, this doesn't quite fit in your journal. And sometimes I even ask, please feel free to suggest journals. And sometimes editors or editor-in-chiefs, they actually suggest the proper journal. And I've had good lucks with that. Okay. Say if you submitted the article and it is within the scope, in the next step, when they do the technical check, and if you have not formatted your article, your article could get rejected based on the formatting mistakes. These are some of the first time mistakes that you would have, because it's a process to submit a complete article, right? So if you're missing any of this, you could get a rejection at the technical check. Say if your article passes the technical check, it goes to the editor, and the editor reads it, and it doesn't have a logical flow, or the editor decides, no, it's not contributing to my journal. It's not going to move his journal. It's not serving to his journal, and he could reject that. That's a desk reject. Say if your submission passes the desk reject, and it goes to the first stage of review, you could either get reject from the first stage of review, or you could get modifications. Good news if you get modifications. You are inside the door. You are in there. Now, once you are in this stage, this is celebration point. This is good. You celebrate here. Okay, then you get some feedback and you rebuttal. So you give your feedback again. And the second stage, it has happened. It's rare, but it has happened that in the second stage of review, the article gets rejected. Rare, but it happens. Okay, and after the second stage, once you submit it, then they make the decision. even rare that after the second round of review, after the rebuttal, the article gets rejected. I mean, there has to be something seriously wrong, that something really went wrong between first stage and second stage, that the article gets rejected in the decision stage. So usually journals are pretty good about not letting you in if your article doesn't fit the scope. Okay, so this has never happened with me. I've been rejected here, I've been rejected here. So I've been through all of this, and that's why it says it's often insulting. The first few times when you get rejected at the submission, technical check, editor, desk rejects, this is all insulting. But you develop thick skin. This is just a part of it. Okay, this board right beside me has 5 or 6 articles that is in the process, and you just get in the you get a reject and you move on to the next stage, and that becomes an automatic process. Okay, so just want to encourage you guys that, be okay with the rejection, because the problem is, I think the problem I have is when the editors reject it and they don't give a feedback. Okay, so rejection is okay, but give the feedback why you rejected. And that's why sometimes I go back and ask, like, give me the feedback, why you rejected that? And that's important. And that's within your rights to ask that. You should ask that. Writing process, this is usually, and this is something that most of the, authors follow, seasoned authors follow. First is, this is a sequence you write an article. You start with your methods. After methods, you write your results. From results, you go to introduction. This is where you're researching all the important articles, that 20 to 40 articles. Then you tie back to the discussion, conclusion, abstract, title, and keywords. Title and keywords coming to the end. But you're tying the article all in the first 4 stages. This is the sequence. Don't think of an article. Don't write your article in this sequence. Sorry. Don't write your article in this sequence. This is very tiring. This is not the sequence of the article. These are the parts of the article. The sequence of writing is the last. Oh, sorry. The sequence is this. This is easier on you because you know how you conducted the study. You did the statistical analysis. You have the results, and then you move on to the introduction, discussion, and conclusion. Okay, so I think that's where I pause, and then there are some references for you all. If there are more questions, I can provide more resources, but I hope I did not lose my students to I did not bore you guys. I was trying to kind of pace myself and go in proper sequence and not take too much time on each article, on each slide. But I will stop talking, and you guys let me know if you have questions. Neha, yes.
Yes, so Dr. Srivastav, we have few questions because already we are running short of time. So we can
Yes.
address, I think, 2-3 questions.
Yes.
So Priya Shri has asked question, why publishing article in PubMed and Scopus journal is difficult, although we follow the same guidelines of writing manuscript?
Priya, I think most of the, I'll speculate on this. The PubMed and Scopus journals they usually have a higher impact factor. And most of my rejections that has happened from PubMed or Scopus journals is based on that it doesn't fit the scope of the article. So I don't know if you have tried before or not, but maybe it's a good idea to run your abstract by those editors first, and then see if if they say that it fits the article, their scope or not. And I agree with you that I have not had in the beginning, I did not have good lucks with PubMed and Scopus journals too. they are pretty strict about what journals and what's the impact factor of the journals and the community that their journal addresses. And I think that's what makes it a little strict on their end. I mean, we can discuss more. There are so many other factors that they consider, but I think I'll mostly agree with your question there that it has been hard with PubMed and Scopus journals too. And maybe because they attract just high impact factor journals. In social behavioral research, we kind of range around 3.0, 1.5 to 3, and that seems a good impact factor. Some of the PubMed and Scopus journals are in the higher end. Maybe that's why they are watching who to let in and what articles to let in. So, but that has been my experience too. Neha's question, could you please guide on good search engines except Google Scholar for identifying literature review and research gaps? Yes, Neha. So what I'll do is I will send I'll send another slide with resources, and that will include the search engines, and I'll email that to Dr. Vijay or Ms. Neha or Dr. Singh. Okay, so I'll address that. I see how to react to the reject from the, yes. And this is what I was mentioning, that when there is a reject, it's important that, okay, so I'll respond in both ways. First, if you get the reject, you want to send a thank you email right away. And then after the reject, you want to address, what I've done is, after the thank you email, I address those reject points one by one, in sequence. And then the next journal that I find goes with those rejection revisions. Okay, so sometimes this is a mistake that I've done before, is that it's rejected. I'm not going to submit my article in that journal again. So why revise it, or why revise it fully? And that's a mistake that I have done before. Okay, just because what I write makes sense to me doesn't mean that you will not address the rejects from a different journal. Okay, I have also asked the editor of the journal who rejected that what would be, I understand rejections, if there is any clarifications that you want to ask, you ask those clarifications, and then I have asked them what would be a better fit. How do you want to revise certain, and editors are usually good about that if you are not sure of a specific comment, of a specific rejection comment and how to address that, I have copied the rejection comment and asked the editor or one of the reviewers in the review board or editorial board, and they have suggested how to address that. So they are usually open to that. But the important point is that if you get rejections, you want to send a thank you note, you want to maintain that relationship, okay? Because I'm in an editorial board, we look for that. What we rejected, is there a communication after that or not? Most of the time, we don't get any response back, and that's understandable. But when we get the response back, we have those names noted. We maintain those relationships. Okay, we can discuss that further. Can you explain what is yin-yang scheme? Yeah, yin-yang scheme is so one good way to explain that is that your content and context is in this juxtaposed relationship. They don't stand alone, and that's why they are in yin-yang scheme. It's just a name of two opposing forces that come together. Okay, and the yin-yang scheme, excuse me. Okay.
You open the mic?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry about that. The cleaning crew is here, and they have finished with the department. Anyway, so I was explaining that yin-yang scheme are two opposing forces that come together to make a whole. Okay, and that's what I was trying to explain, that this is the yin-yang logo. And what data were collected and how they were collected. These are in yin-yang relationship. And based on these two relationships, you get to decide what data you want to pick to interpret. Okay. Content and context is also in that yin-yang relationship. You have to know what is there and what's missing. And the other part is your study brings the content to fill those gaps, yin-yang relationship. Okay, so hopefully that answers. So Tisha, remember, let me know if you have more questions and we can discuss that further. What is the significance of future directions in manuscript writing? Good question. Future direction is, like I was saying, that you want to leave an open end in the end of your writing. You don't want your article to sound that your article was the capstone article and was the best article, and that's the end of that research line. That's not the aim of an article. You want to leave some open-ended questions which suggest, hey, you can do this. This is a good future direction for this study. And like I was saying, that your study is just a link in a chain, okay, so that people keep building. So that you want to leave those healthy open endings, and those are the future directions of manuscript writing. And you want to, and that's future directions is usually in that conclusion last paragraph. Oh, what's your take on use of AI tools for research paper writing? Oh, I don't know how to answer that question. And probably because there is, I mean, in University of Nevada and across the university and across US, across the world, right now the sentiment is not to use that for research writing, for technical writing. And it so much coincides with the whole concept of plagiarism. So I don't know. I don't think so. I have a conclusive answer for that, because we are in this fluid discussion state of like how much of an AI is a healthy use of AI for research writing, because that completely contradicts the whole idea of critical thinking, contradicts the whole idea of of writing a manuscript. Can you please guide us on how to determine the target general for my manuscript?
Dr. Praduman, we are a little bit short of time and already we exceeded. So I know there are plenty of questions, and
I see there are, yeah.
it's good that the presentation was such that it does to the most of the audience, and there are lots of interest from the audience. So maybe in 30 seconds, in some final concluding remarks from your side.
Yeah, no, I would just say that I have a couple of questions that I will address. I will send a resource that includes how to generate keywords, how to find right articles for your if you have the abstract, how to find the good right journal to publish in that. So there are some resources based on that. There is a resource in which you actually put your abstract and gives you the keywords. You may or may not accept those keywords, but there are those resources too. All in all, I would say if I would have known this knowledge in the beginning of my doctorate or master's, I think I would have started my scholarly journey a little bit more with a little bit more confidence. And that's exactly what I'm trying to convey to my students here. Okay, so move on nice and bold. Know these parts of the manuscript. These are some of the important points I try to summarize for you guys. And if you have questions, I'm here. Dr. Vijay, you can let Dr. Vijay know, Ms. Neha know, Dr. Singh know, and I'll stay in touch. This is awesome.
Sir, it's a request from everyone that how can they reach out to you for further more discussion, or they have any doubt regarding their manuscripts or regarding future research work. So if it's permitted, we can drop your email ID in the chat box.
Yes, please. I'll do that. yeah, please feel free to reach out, and then I'll share my email signature that has the email signature that has more details. So that is something that Dr. Vijay or Dr. Singh or Ms. Neha will share that with you all. I truly appreciate everybody attending. You know, it is so awesome to see almost 90, 100, participants. This is beautiful.
It was a wonderful presentation, sir. And I would like to request Dr. Pinki or Dr. Vijay for the vote of thanks and shares a few words.
Dr. Srivastav, sir, really it was very nice presentation, and for students, whoever has joined, they have really what you said. If we could have known these things before our this career, means starting after the bachelor masters, we could have done more. So it's a very crisp presentation, sir. It's too good. It's awesome presentation. Thank you, sir, for this presentation.
Thank you,
Thank
ma'am. Yeah, no, when I start presenting and talking to students excite me. So
Yeah.
so when they were here, so sorry it took a little long, but I wanted to kind of,
Yeah,
give a
it
big
was
picture.
very informative, sir. Yeah. Vijay, sir, over to you, please.
So thank you, Dr. Pradum, for first being available and sharing your expertise and your experience, especially your journey in the terms of in the research. So on this occasion, I'd like to thank the President and Secretary of JISHA for giving this opportunity to host this webinar. And this is the initiative of our JISHA, Journal of Indian Speech and Hearing Association, where we are conducting a lecture series on the various components of research. And this was the idea to why not to talk about the publication of a manuscript, and two-way this talk was planned. First from the author's perspective, and second part of this was from the editor's perspective. And thank you, Dr. Praduman, and congratulations that you balanced both things adequately. And it's the audience, and by seeing the response from the audience in the chat box, it appears that you have reached out to all of us. And thank you for your ability, and we'll make sure that in future also we'll be in connect with you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks to all the participants. Without you, these things could have, it doesn't make any sense to conduct any webinar. So thank you for your presence and for all your feedback. As Dr. Praduman is available to us, so feel free to reach out to him, and I can assure that on our behalf, he'll be equally interested and excited to respond to you. Thank you.
Yeah, stole my thought. This would not be possible without the students. So thanks for making it awesome. I truly appreciate it. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Do we
very
leave?
much.
Okay.
Yeah, we can leave.
Okay. Thank you. Take care. Bye, guys.